Welcome to the Intentionists podcast, where we explore the interplay between intuition, spiritual health, and everything in between. I'm your host, Aimee Schreiber.
And I'm Hillary Zwallen. Our intention is to create a dialogue that inspires you to consciously forge your path with curiosity and compassion for life and its mysteries. Hello, Intentionists. This week, Aimee welcomes Roxi Patino to discuss self-actualization and ayahuasca medicine. That's right, ayahuasca. I hadn't even heard of ayahuasca until a few years ago, and now I feel like I'm hearing it everywhere, and maybe it's because I'm running in more spiritual-based circles, but I've been curious about this for a long time. I was really thrilled to listen to this episode. I think you guys are going to like it, regardless of what your point of view is on things like ayahuasca. So listen on. She takes us on a journey of radical life change that illustrates the potential of research-based action coupled with the mind-blowing magic of intuition and spiritual receptivity. They begin by discussing the catalysts for Roxi's personal transformation, right? We all have these moments when you feel like it's coming and you don't know what to do, and it's usually super hard and you're at that crossroads. So wherever you're at, maybe you'll relate to where Roxi was. We talk about biohacking and the concept of attachment and how that plays a role in the process. She shares her experiences, you guys, of taking ayahuasca 5 times in the past year and her expectations, insights gained, and super intimate stories of healing and forgiveness. This is the real gift, you guys. I think oftentimes we all have had those moments where we've had spiritual experiences and we oftentimes don't share them because we're worried about either our own internal questions or judgment from others. Roxi gets so vulnerable and talks about these really amazing stories of healing and forgiveness. So you guys are going to love this. And we're so grateful she took the time to do this with us. She and Aimee closed their discussion with thoughts on the balance between logical action and intuitive surrender, recent studies on forgiveness and frequency, and elevating the collective consciousness of humanity. Roxi is a giver, educator, caretaker of homes, children, pets. She's a traveler, biohacker, vegetarian who enjoys forest bathing hikes and loves water, be it ocean, river, or rain. She's originally from Chicago and has spent nearly a decade in the Puerto Vallarta, Mexico Bay Area. So if after this episode is over, if there's anyone that wants to learn more about Roxi's experiences with ayahuasca medicine, or wants information regarding retreats, you can email Roxi at RoxiJoyPatino@gmail.com. That's RoxiJoyPatino@gmail.com. Or you can give her a call because she gives out her phone number. In the US, it's 630-506-6118. In Mexico, 52322-116-4159. And without further ado, I'm going to turn the time over to Aimee and Roxi. And I really hope you guys enjoyed this episode. And thanks so much for listening. I cannot say it enough. We so value our listeners. So grateful for you guys supporting us. And we hope you enjoyed this episode.
Well, Roxi, thank you so much for coming to talk with me today. I thought that we could just jump right in and start talking about making radical life changes, which you have done. So can you tell me a little bit about your background and kind of the beginnings of your self-improvement journey? Like, was there a certain catalyst for your desire to make a lot of changes, or tell me about that?
Yes, I think there was. First of all, thank you so much for providing this space. When it comes to intentions, it's definitely a very important part of my journey. And I always say that my journey began about 1.5 years ago. I was getting out of a relationship. I had left PV and was in the US for 6 months, and that relationship didn't work out. So I found myself in Phoenix on a plane back home with about $150, I think, in my pocket and some debt on my credit cards, no job, no place to live, and was calling my friend from the airport and telling her I would be arriving in a few hours, if it would be okay for me to crash on her couch or if her spare bedroom was available.
And you had been living in Puerto Vallarta how long before that point?
I've been in Mexico. This is my 9th year.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And I just kind of have bounced kind of around the Bay area here between the two states.
Okay.
So when that happened, I came to Ajijic. She was actually outside of Guadalajara.
Okay.
So it wasn't coming back to PV. It was just coming to a place where I could stay and kind of figure things out. So that's where my journey began. You know, they say that you kind of go through changes or growth periods, you know, every 7 to 10 years. And I think that kind of happened, you know, for me around 14, 15, there was some changes there. And in my 20s, I was in the US, kind of in the rat race. According to everyone, you know, making good money, college degree, you know, had everything, and then decided to move here. And I just kind of fell into the same thing, just in a different country, right. You know, the rat race. So it was about the next 7 years later, and I just found myself on the plane thinking, I can't be in the same place or worse than I was when I first moved 7 or 8 years ago. And it was on that flight that I was like, this will never happen to me again. I will not allow this to happen ever again.
Nice. Having nothing to come to is quite the encouragement. That's not the word I'm looking for.
It was kind of a desperation more than encouragement, I think. More of a, like, where have I found myself, you know, in a breakup and no place to live, you know, starting from scratch. Yeah, it was kind of in a place, you know, of having nothing, that I thought, like, I can't allow this to happen again. And my friend at the time, she used to say to me all the time, a quote by Albert Einstein, he says, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting different results.
That's such a good one. And
she repeated that like over and over again, and it just really kind of clicked. Yeah, that flight back, that was the time when I decided that everything that I had been doing was not working, obviously. And I was going to do the opposite of everything.
Wow. So where did you start?
I started with meditation. Like, I knew meditation had something to do with it. I read Life of a Yogi, and that really kind of opened up my mind in so many ways. And the Life of a Yogi is a lot of meditation.
What's the author of that?
Yogananda.
Oh, the autobiography. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yes. The autobiography, yes. And that book really kind of opened up my mind of what was possible, not only in, you know, a metaphysical sense, but also in, you know, in spirituality and everything.
Well, his life experience in general was pretty remarkable.
Yes. The idea of life actualization, you know, creating your life exactly the way you want it. And I read that Steve Jobs gifted that book at his funeral.
Oh, wow.
And technology was another thing that I knew was involved some way, one way or another. So the kind of the combination of those two things, I feel like that was like, I just knew that whatever it is I was going to do, I was going to be meditating and using technology.
So how have you been using technology? Like, where did that come into play?
What happened was I decided that I needed to get an inventory of what I had to see what I had to work with to make this happen. And I had a car, I had a computer, I had a phone, and I had my brain. And that was my inventory. I had these 4 things that I needed to rely on. And the computer was just, you know, the internet. You could Google anything.
Right.
And I started literally Googling how to follow your intuition, things like that. The person I was with, I would observe him and watch how he did things. And that was something that I really noticed. And I realized that I didn't have any mentors in my life. So I guess to go back a little bit, I'm born in Chicago from immigrant parents. I was first generation, and my parents split when I was about 5. So I was in a single parent home, but being raised by my dad. Mm-hmm. And I realized that was a big imbalance in my life, was having all of the, masculine qualities, of logic and those things, and not really having the intuition side, the feminine side. And when I realized, people rely on that, mm-hmm. I literally was Googling how to use your intuition or how to find it or what is it. Uh-huh. And I took an online course from Jeffrey Allen, and that was just, mind-blowing. The things that your mind can do and tell you and guide you. It's just, it was just mind-blowing. So I immediately did that. I got to her house, and I immediately started doing that, and pretty much just researching everything online, everything up to the point to where, people ask you to purchase something.
Right.
I didn't have any money, so I would do all of, the free tidbits from everywhere.
Nice.
And meditation kind of just always came up, and it always came up. Within a week, I was house sitting a mansion, a 3-home mansion in Akiki. And I just thought, this is my chance. This is my chance to just go all in. Nobody is around. It was, 3 homes, 3 bedrooms each home, kitchen, living room. 2 of them had pools. I mean, just a fairy tale complex. And I had it all to myself.
Wow.
And I did that. I Googled, how to get focus, how to plan, how to dream. I didn't do any of that. I didn't know how. When I was asked what my dreams were, I was literally well, marriage, family, my own business, maybe. And I realized that I didn't have that, and I didn't know how to do it. I was never asked. I was never asked growing up. When you're in coming from an immigrant family, it was very important to fit into society. So to get a job, and in the US, stability, so kind of being at the same place, right, is almost revered. They've been there for a long time. And when I came here to Mexico, I realized that I was kind of doing a lot of different jobs. I was doing different jobs. I would bounce from one job to the next, and I would feel bad about it. I thought it was not a good thing. I couldn't find my place. No matter how much I tried to fit in, it wasn't until after 7 years that I thought that that's not the way to do it, just to be applying for jobs and, working as much as I can to climb up the ladders, and literally not making much leeway in those 7 years.
So in that moment, you decided to kind of take yourself on your own personal retreat in this mansion that you were house sitting. So how long were you at this place?
A couple of weeks.
So what happened in those weeks? Did you start to see some serious internal changes? What did kind of the shift and the change in your mind look like in that time?
In that time, I did, John Assaraf does a brain-a-thon. I think it's an 8-hour thing. And I did that the entire day. And so that kind of gave me direction. I kind of figured out what my big goals or dreams would be, and breaking it down into small goals up until, by the month. Mm-hmm. And I knew that the way I thought, negative thinking, I knew that was part of it. So I had to figure out ways to stop my thought process. And that was very beneficial, being on my own. I would, when they say scream things out loud, I would do that. Mm-hmm. I would definitely put my heart and soul into, letting any frustrations out or any affirmations, and just really kind of embedding that in my brain out loud. And that was very powerful thing to do. The property was beautiful, being in the pool. So being in water was therapeutic. Going on walks in the property was beautiful. So there were so many things that allowed me or gave me that safe environment to do that kind of work. And things, just kind of started happening from there. Right after I was offered a job in PV, and it was online. I knew I wanted to do something online, and the pay was pretty good, for Mexican standards. And I came back to PV doing that. It was doing what I had been doing for the last 7 or 10 years, working in management and quality and executive assistant positions, offices. So I was working for an attorney's office. So I came and did that, and it was great, and it was wonderful, and I was so grateful, and I got a raise within a month, and, I found this amazing place in Conchas Chinas with a view. And I remember I came back, so this is just about a month now after I had come back, and a tear fell down my face when I woke up, kind of a where am I state, and looking out the window and seeing this big gorgeous moon and just this white, illuminated path like directly coming at me. And it just felt like people wait their whole lives to have this, and I'm still in my 30s and I have it now. Wow. So tons of gratitude.
Yeah, that's a pretty amazing and dramatic time frame. I'm interested in, you mentioned the program that you did. Can you say that one more time?
John Assaraf, he did a brain-a-thon.
Okay, so brain-a-thon. Are there other books or resources that you used during that time, or that are kind of your favorites today? Like,
oh yes,
in that realm,
there's so many techniques in that time frame that I use. Tony Robbins was one that helped with the stop thought processing, just kind of yelling out something totally random. So I used that in that time. I also focused really on my health. I think Ty Lopez has like some videos out there, and he talks about, I think, the 4 pillars of a healthy life, successful, a happy life. And one of those is health and finances, wealth and family relationships. And I knew that health had to be like the foremost thing. I had previously, about a year before, I was diagnosed with a back condition, to where the doctor told me, I used to run, and I used to love running on the beach. And the doctor told me, you need to stop running immediately. And I was like, okay, when can I resume? And he was like, not anytime soon. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, I had a round vertebrae, and I had the back, or that space of a 55-year-old.
Oh no. So
he said, no more running ever. And I asked him about walks on the beach, and he was like, no walks on the beach. And I thought I can do 15 minutes, 15 minutes there and back. And he was like, no. I was like, 10 minutes? And he was like, no. I was like, 5 minutes? And he was like, you can do 5 minutes, so make sure you walk there and back.
Wow.
And so I realized how bad, I guess it was. Great doctor, though. He immediately got me on a therapy schedule to where I got off my pain medications. And when I started doing this transformation, I decided to make my own routine, because the routine that he had told me was pretty much in a gym. It was a heat pad or sauna or heat for 20 minutes. And then it was 20 minutes of the sit down bicycles where you kind of lean back, kind of the old people bikes. So 20 minutes of that, and then very specific exercises with certain equipment to rebuild strength and everything. And then it was again, the 20 minutes afterwards. So it was about an hour and a half routine that I could do at home, 20 minutes 3 times a day, or in a gym for an hour and a half. And I was doing that, and there was some success in that. when I came back and I decided that I had been almost wasting the last few years, and I decided I'm not doing that anymore. So I decided that I would hack my way to everything. So I started biohacking and decided that I would condition myself using meditation and my brain power, basically.
So biohacking, just quick definition for people who haven't heard about it.
I would say biohacking is adjusting your biology. The way I see it, it's a hack. So when people hack into your computer, they kind of break the code and reprogram it. And it's essentially what I started to do in your brain to adjust your biology.
So using your brain to influence your body.
Yes.
Cool.
Sounds outrageous. Now that
when I first heard that word, I'm thinking, okay, so like, is this splicing your genes in the garage with like a little one of those things you can buy on Amazon? Or like, but then I looked and I saw there's a lot out on it. There's a lot of nutrition stuff. There's a lot of like memory, like learning tools and stuff with this. So tell me a little bit more about your experiences biohacking.
For me, what happened is I didn't have money for a gym. So I figured, okay, I know like with certain exercise, I can do it if I just program my brain to do a certain exercise and be very religious about it. Whatever I decide to do, that I would be in the best shape I've ever been.
So it's the intent behind the action that you choose.
Yes.
Is where the power is.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So basically kind of just go in and reprogram the part of my brain that said that I wouldn't have a healthy back unless I was going to a gym an hour and a half a day.
Okay.
So that was what I believed. So I changed that. And along with that, I feel like there's always a detox portion, emotionally and physically. So I, after doing some research and on being, healthy and foods that were toxic, I gave up a lot of the foods that I was eating, like whole wheat bread, soy, milk, butter, things like that are just chemicals, basically. And then there is, that action part. That this is what, instead of what the doctor was telling me I should do, I gave myself a routine that I thought that was good enough. And to this day, that's the extent of my exercising. I used to go to the gym for an hour and a half, and now I do 5 to 15 minutes of a routine that I invented for myself.
And you put all your intention and all your belief behind that thing. And you are not experiencing the same back pain and anything that you were.
Oh, I haven't taken any medication in the last year and a half.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I think the very first thing I did was cigarettes and drinking. I was drinking and smoking a lot. Going through all those changes, a pack a day. I was smoking a pack of cigarettes a day, and that was money that I didn't have to spend. So I told myself that I was going to kick the habit in 7 days. And so I just, looked up, a simple 7-step plan and followed it. And it was essentially that, kind of feeling where the anxiety was that caused me to smoke and replacing that with something. So in 7 days, I quit smoking and I haven't smoked a cigarette since.
Wow.
And I quit drinking and I decided that I would do my own workout.
Well, I think that's important that you brought up that you had to figure out for yourself, look inside at like what the root of your habit was, that it was, you had to search and find the root of that anxiety so you could redirect it. And I think that is key to everything that you're talking about as far as making these positive changes or getting rid of negative habits is reaching down for the root, like the root, which is often an emotion of some sort, some negative emotion or something that we don't want to look at. Then when you look at it, then that's when you have the power to to rearrange things and or
Yes.
a biohack, as you say.
Exactly. Like just like you said, finding that root gave me kind of control. Like now I was in control. It wasn't controlling me anymore because I was aware. And the minute that I was aware what I was doing and when I was doing it, it gave me the power to decide if that was something that I wanted to continue to do. In my case, I'd feel like I didn't have an option and what I would do to replace that.
So what did you replace smoking, for example, with?
The breathing, the meditation. I started doing a lot of that. Like that, when I quit smoking, meditation became my religious thing every day that I was going to do because I knew part of that was the breathing.
Right. Well, because smoking it's very ritualistic, and you are deep breathing, and there is that connection to the breath that you picked up on and transformed, which is awesome.
Yes, and I think that's key to life, to living. Just breathing, inhaling and exhaling. It's amazing how simple it is.
Right. Well, it's something we do all day without thinking of. As when I'm doing a lot of yoga and I'm in the meditative breathing mindset, like I'll catch myself in the middle of the day and realize like I haven't taken a single deep breath for like 5 hours, and then you take one and it changes your entire feelings inside. Like it's pretty amazing.
Yes.
Can you talk for a second about making room for these new habits and new ways of being? How does the idea of attachment play a role in either helping or hindering this process of change? Like attachment to either your previous beliefs, like you said, or attachment to a certain outcome or belief in an outcome. I think it can kind of go both ways. So I'm interested to hear your ideas about
attachment. That's a very good question. Attachment for me in this process came through family, attachment to family, attachment to religion. Religion was a big one. I come from a very, very Catholic family, and also of nationality. I felt there was a need for me, kind of to fit into Mexican society or American society, and I decided that I wouldn't consider myself either anymore. I didn't feel that I was American or Mexican. I felt that I was a human being.
So those are all ideas that you had to detach from in order to get where you wanted to be.
Yes, exactly. And I think the autobiography of a yogi, that really opened up my eyes to other ways of thinking, other beliefs. And I was looking into, Buddhism, and their attachment there is a big, thing. It's where, all pain comes from.
Yeah, I was thinking about the whole concept of attachment under the Buddhist umbrella. And under that, it's like, yes, all attachment, it is the root of all suffering. But then I was thinking, too, that when you have a new idea and you have a new goal, like it almost requires an insane amount of obsession and belief in it to like actually accomplish it. So I mean, I don't know. I was just contemplating like the balance. And I'm sure someone could easily say, like, no, that's not actually attachment. That's just necessary.
Well, I think
belief.
It does happen a lot. I think it does happen a lot in businesses and with entrepreneurs, too. When you have to make that decision of letting go of a business, that you put your heart and soul into. And for a lot of people, it's ending a relationship. So I think it is part of that. For me, the intention setting, and this is what I love. I read The Code of the Extraordinary Mind by Vishen Lakhiani, and that was a book that I follow a lot. And a lot of it is, you kind of program your brain kind of what you want, and then you kind of let it go.
Okay.
And a lot of that is something that you hear a lot in, I mentioned that I've taken ayahuasca, the ancient medicine, and there it's all about intentions as well. And what they tell you is have your attention, have it with you, But at the moment of, exploring this healing realm, let it go and use your guidance, your intuition. It's almost a godlike, visionary state, and allow that to guide you.
So it's the planning and the intention and this kind of, we can call it masculine strategy, that you put forward, but then comes the surrender and the receptivity and allowing of things to unfold how you hope they will. I mean, you don't ultimately have control, but like I think I like that outline.
And kind of trusting, you've got to trust if things aren't going that way and there's, tons of things that are coming up, maybe that's directing you towards the right direction.
Right. So tell me more about ayahuasca, like kind of origins, history of it for people who haven't heard about it.
Ayahuasca is it's a tea of sorts. It originated in Peru and the Ecuador area, the upper Amazon, northern, western Amazon. And now it's used widely in Brazil. And recently it's come into, Western society. Mm-hmm. Recently, I think in the 60s was the first time there was any kind of study done on what it is and what it does for people. And it was actually a doctor from the US that was looking for medicines to heal what was going on in the 60s in the time of the Vietnam War. And there was a lot of veterans with post-traumatic stress disorder. And he was looking for medicines to heal that.
Oh, wow.
And now it's more widespread. And I think that, kind of going back to, I knew that I had to start doing things differently. Uh-huh. So letting go of everything I was holding on so tightly to, like family, religion, and so that was part of it. And I could also see what was happening in society, with the internet and things, industries and corporations, and I think even more so now, we can kind of see the state the world is in, and it just seems like, Indigenous people survive longer, they're happier, and I just felt the real need to kind of go back to those kind of teachings. And so I explored, Ayurveda from India and, read about forest bathing and Reiki energy in Japan. Mm-hmm. And here in Mexico, the Toltec traditions, like the Four Agreements. So all of those things were coming up and were really resonating, being kind of in touch with the elements and everything. And I had first heard of ayahuasca a few years ago, and it was very interesting, and I was interested. It just kind of never came up. And as I was on this journey, I knew that spirituality was something that I wanted to explore. And I knew it was something that I wanted to do. And as soon as I heard that a friend of a friend was doing it, I jumped right on to do it. I was too afraid to do it by myself.
Traditionally, it's done with a shaman in a religious type ceremony.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. It's with a shaman. I call them retreats because it's so much more than just that ceremony. I believe some people do just the ceremony. For me, it was, an all-day thing. So it's meditation, the entire day. They give workshops on, where the plant comes from. So it's a tea that you drink. Everyone kind of comes together, and at nightfall, you drink the tea, and the shaman and the guides kind of guide and protect you while you're exploring and while you're everyone's on their own journey.
And did you have any experience with hallucinogens before doing ayahuasca?
In college years, I had tried a couple of things. It always seems very bizarre when people ask that, because For me, it's two totally different things, like entirely different things. I had tried mushrooms and had seen some lovely grass growing and flowers growing in the meadow. I had tried that once and maybe LSD once.
But just to get context, like this isn't like you're not a person who was historically all about trying to enter these altered states of consciousness.
Oh,
like,
yes. No,
this was kind of out of left field a little bit for you.
Yes, this is a totally different animal.
Did you get any pushback from friends and family, or were people pretty encouraging when you decided to do that?
When I started my journey, so in the Code of the Extraordinary Mind with Vishen Lakhiani, he breaks down life into 12 dimensions. And this was a really great structure for me because it just seemed like I had so many things that were not okay in my life. So I just did, super simple exercise where each one I would kind of gauge where I'm at on a scale of 1 to 5. And the 3 lowest ones, like that would be my focus for the next 3 to 6 months. And at first it was health, finances, and environment. A place to live, a job, and my health. So I did that. And then the next 6 months was my social circle and my spirituality was in there. So by then I had entered into a social circle of like-minded people. So for them, it was people were very welcoming. A couple of people had tried it, had done it. And I didn't have any backlash when it came to that. Previously, when I would speak to it with friends, they were kind of like, didn't really want to talk about it. And everyone kind of has heard about it. But there's a lot of unknowns there.
Right. So how many times have you done it now?
Now it's been 5 times.
So what did you expect beforehand, and how did that compare to like what actually happened? Can you walk us through like a general outline of the ceremony?
Well, the whole process, it is a very individual experience, and they do say that the ayahuasca calls you. And like I said, for me, it was something that resonated for years, and I really wanted, I jumped on the opportunity to do this. I did so much research. That's the way that I decided that I was going to figure out my life, because I didn't have people around me, mentors. I didn't have an upbringing that really taught me how to do things. So I was researching everything, from the best. And ayahuasca actually came up in a lot of the books. A lot of celebrities have done it. A lot of successful people have done it. So from my experience, I did a lot of research. I was scared. I was very, very scared. I was expecting to meet my demons, and I didn't know what they would look like. I didn't know what they were going to do to me. So the night before, I cried. I was afraid. I didn't know what, I had inside of me, whatever evil was there. And the actual experience was nothing at all. Nothing at all like that. It was not demonic. It was not violent. It wasn't, intense. It wasn't any of that. It was very loving and it was very gentle. And the shaman, who's actually a young guy in his late 30s, but has been doing it for 20 years. Since he was 18, he felt the calling, and he's been doing that ever since. And he said he began one with an intention, and he kind of said, do what you will with us for the healing of everyone. And he said that was the most intense experience he had ever had. And he never again asked for that or had that intention for the group. So before our ceremony, he said, guide us, show us a healing path for all of us in a loving and gentle way.
Oh, well, that's nice.
That intention, I feel like definitely set the tone for everyone's experience. Mine in particular, it was very, very gentle. It was almost too gentle. I thought, I'm not really seeing a whole lot. I'm not getting a lot of messages, but there were. There were messages. It was definitely, it amazing.
So after drinking the tea, you physically purge everything, right? Like,
Not necessarily. I didn't
No?
on the first time, no. I drank the tea. There was some spirit animal visions. I was by the door and I kept seeing a crocodile by the door, and it kind of scared me. And I fell asleep because I was afraid that I was seeing things right away. And when I woke up, people were kind of walking in and out to go to use the restroom, and I would see that crocodile there. And when I woke up, he was still there, but he kind of had a smile on his face.
it's a friendly crocodile.
Yes. So then I took a second dose of the tea, and I had some visions of a large woman at the base of a tree with kind of snakes, kind of a Medusa-like looking like thing with snakes all over, and one big snake kind of came at me and into my stomach. And I was so easily distracted from everyone else. It was a group of maybe 30.
Oh, it's big.
Yeah, so it was really easy for me to get distracted and get out of any visions or anything like that. And that's what happened. So after a while, I was getting frustrated, actually, and I went outside and I was just kind of disappointed, really disappointed in the whole experience. And I just thought, like, this is like, I'm not getting anything out of this. And one of the guides came out and asked me, if everything was okay. And I said, yeah, I just don't feel like I'm, getting anything out of it. And he said, at this point, it was later on in the evening or in the night. And he said, at this point, you're not going to have any visions. You won't see anything, but surrender and allow whatever message you need to hear, allow it to be shown to you. And I thought, okay. And I sat back down, and by then everyone else had, was kind of sleeping. And I was, kind of, meditating and, with my intention and surrendering. And then I just felt this, like, someone come from this side and just from the left side and just like embrace me. And I remember thinking, like, Mom, but my mom is a tiny woman. This being was not tiny at all. She was very large. And I was like, Grandma? But no, my grandmother wasn't that large either. And I just knew, like, it was just this feeling of like real unconditional love. And she said, you don't have to cry anymore. Like, your past is your past. And that was it. And she held me for the rest of the night. And I mean, it was just so, for me, transformational. I didn't have my mom growing up. She left. So for me, that wasn't really an unconditional kind of love.
Right.
And my dad was transferred when I was 9 or 10. So we kind of moved away from any family we might have had in Chicago. And my grandmother died I believe it was that first or second year that we had moved. And she was in Mexico, but nonetheless, I didn't have the grandmother figure either growing up. So this for me was really, 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 it was transformational.
So that was basically your first experience ever with any sort of supportive, divine, loving, feminine energy or entity, or to you, what do you think that this woman was that came to you?
We call her Pachamama, Mother Nature, the oneness of divine universe. Yeah, like I don't doubt that that's what it was. Like feeling that connection and that oneness with, Earth, that unconditional. I mean, there was so much compassion. Like I had never felt that amount of compassion for the days and weeks and months after. Like wow. No matter, I couldn't be, nothing would be disturbing Like there was just so much compassion for anything that anyone could say. Like I couldn't. There was just that unconditional love. Like
It stayed.
yeah, it's amazing. Yeah.
Wow. So afterwards, so you were drawn to keep going back then. Like, how did your understanding evolve over each experience? I'm assuming they were all very different.
Yes.
From each other.
They were all very different. I knew I wanted to continue. They recommend 3 or 4 months after the first one. And so that was in August last year. In January of this year, I took the second one, and it was equally as mind-blowing. And I went very prepared. You know, I wasn't going to sit by the door because I was too distracted, easily distracted. And it ended up being a very small group this time. Instead of 30, it was something like 8 people, and there was 4 guides. So it was an entirely different experience. And the shaman, you can sense their presence. You know, it's very peaceful. You know, it's very loving. They're medicine men. You know, or they're here. There's some women too, that to help heal and guide. And since the group was so small, he had mentioned in the previous ceremony, since he was a little kid, he was able to see auras, and he has a twin, so he felt confident enough, you know, to share that with him. You know, are you seeing what I'm seeing? And so I inquired about it, and right away he was like, do you want me to read your aura? And I just thought, like, sure, like, of course. And it was just a few minutes, and he said, you know, I know exactly what you're going to work on today. And I was like, what's that? And he's like, you're carrying a lot of pain and sorrow. And he was like, it's in your chakras, in your heart and in your throat chakra. In order for you to grow spiritually, you need to be able to flow. And it's so heavy right there. It's like, that's what it is. And he said it like, there's just like no doubt in his mind. Like he could see it clear as day, you know.
That's fascinating.
That's what you have. And in order for you to get your message out into the world, you need to get past that. And that experience was mind blowing. I hadn't talked to my sister. I had disconnected from her a year before. There was lots of criticism and judgments in the house, and a lot had come from her, and I had just, you know, had enough. I just thought, like, this relationship isn't serving me as much as I try and be a good sister and have a good relationship. Like, I keep getting, you know, these backlashes from my own sister. And so I had completely cut off ties, maybe said a few words to her on Christmas when I was there. No contact at all. After the second ceremony, on my way home the next day, I got a message from her, and she was like, hey, and that just blew me away because we hadn't messaged at all, nothing. And she was like, so I had a dream about you. And I couldn't respond. I was driving for one, and I didn't know. It was just so mind blowing to me. And she said it was so vivid, I can't help but share it.
Wow.
And, you know, she went on to tell me what the dream was. And I was just speechless. I didn't know what to say. And I just responded that, thank you for sharing. And I'm so grateful that we're connected. Because in that ceremony, she spent a lot of time with me, kind of sharing her pain and her struggles. Yeah. In that ceremony, there was, a huge release of shame and guilt. And after a while, I realized, like, I wasn't crying my tears anymore. And I was like, whose tears are they? You know? And she came up, and, you know, and then my brother came up, and, you know, it was just, it was so powerful. It was so very powerful, you know, to have which was for me the beginning of their healing process.
Wow.
And there's just like no doubt in my mind. The next time I did it was in March, 2 months later. And I thought, like, do I really need this? Like, it's going great. It's not a particularly pleasant experience because of the purging. The second time I did purge, I was kind of back and forth. I knew that I wanted to continue. I just wasn't sure if I should or if I shouldn't. And I was leaving an Om meditation kirtan circle. So I was with friends who, I'm comfortable speaking, this kind of woo stuff with. And I had noticed the street lights were really bright. And I had kind of noticed it like the day before. And this time, like we had come out, it was dark and it was just really bright. And when we got in the car, I said, "Do you notice how bright the streetlights are? Did they change the lights? Do you see what I'm seeing?" And she didn't skip a beat. She was like, "Oh, that's the ayahuasca calling you." And I was just like, "What?" And she said, "Yeah, that's the ayahuasca. She's calling you."
She speaks through the lights.
So it's a sensitivity, to light and to colors and everything like that. And it felt right. Like as soon as she said it, I just thought, yeah, like it is. And so I went and again, and another amazing experience. And yeah, it's every time it's transformational. So a month later in April, the fourth time I took it again, I was like, I feel like I've done so much. They say 3 or 4, sessions is kind of the therapy for it. Do I really need to do this? And I'm kind of thinking like, okay, well, am I seeing signs? And I kind of saw the bright lights again days before. And I thought, I just wasn't sure. And I was talking to someone about signs. And she would say, yeah, and I just heard this. And I'm like, did you actually hear it? Like, do you hear it? And she was like, I don't actually hear it, but it's as if I had. And I thought, okay. And I thought, well, I've been looking for a sign. And in that moment, I saw what for me was clear as day, that I'm meant to do it. So there's a diet, there's a process 2 weeks before, there's no meat, no sugars, no caffeine, no alcohol, no smoking, no sexual relations. So there's a diet that kind of goes so that you're able to connect to source. So I thought, okay, I've got the sign. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to work on this time, but okay. And that morning I had seen a missed call from my dad. And you're also kind of told to steer clear of any negativity or anything that can, interrupt your experience. And I thought, should I call? Should I not call? And I was like, no, I feel like I should call. Like, let me call because it'll be on my mind, all night, make sure he's okay and everything. Because he's had some kidney and heart issues the last couple of years. So I call her. I'm like, yeah, so how are you doing and everything? And he's like, oh, I'm fine. But the doctor said that I have leukemia. And I thought, really? When was that? And I had this was the day I was doing it. So I was kind of in my meditative state, the night before and preparing for this. And as soon as he told me, it's like, I knew that's why I was meant to do it. And it wasn't, and it still isn't like heartbreaking for me, to share that. We had a beautiful conversation. I asked him, how he was feeling. He said he was feeling fine. And, I thanked him for sharing. And if there was anything that, I could do to let me know, I told him I was going to be going to a ceremony, but that we would talk later. And yeah, my dad came. He spent a lot of time with me in that ceremony. And this ceremony was just joy. I mean, it was so much joy. Like, yeah, he came right away. As soon as I, took it, as soon as I felt the connection, like he came right away and he was like, I'm here. I'm ready for healing. Like, what do we got to do?
Wow.
So that was a very beautiful experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing. And sitting here, I didn't notice this before, but in hearing you talk about the beginning of kind of your journey, making all these changes, and you took this very structured, meticulous, kind of linear masculine approach to it. And then in launching into your journey with ayahuasca, you speak about it like it was a very intuitive process. You felt it calling. You were paying attention to these signs and symbols that you saw around you. And I think that's fascinating that everything you've shared today is just showing the importance of both sides of these things. Like we need it all. Like we need to be whole, like with both pieces of our minds, of our souls functioning properly. Like you did all the research, you did all this, and then you're listening to the intuition. Like not one is higher or better than the other. Like they're both necessary, which is exciting to me because I think especially in talking about women and women's work, like there's a misconception that no, the intuition is what matters most, and it's what's higher and what's better, and the receptivity. But I think you illustrated beautifully throughout this whole conversation that like you need both the action and the surrender.
It's balance. I think it all comes down to balance. And yeah, I think the ayahuasca is just that. It opened up, my intuitive side. After hearing about his leukemia, I would have previously, the old Roxy would have immediately started researching, and figuring out what it was, what we're looking at. I never, to this day, I haven't done that. And yeah, it's a beautiful thing. My family, I didn't realize it at the time, but about a month after, I realized that he hadn't told my siblings. And the old Roxy would have called immediately, everyone, and figured out, what's going on. Why didn't anybody tell me? Just because I'm far away, nobody lets me in. And I didn't feel that need. I didn't feel that need at all to do that. And about a month later, he told them, and I was traveling on a bus at the time, so I didn't have signal. And, my mom got a hold of me and she was like, just to let you know, like your brothers and sisters were frantically looking for you because they just found out about, your father. And I let them know that I had already known. And it just, for me, made me realize how much I had changed in so little time. I mean, even my family was expecting the old me, to be the emotionally, all over the place. And I've found that balance. And I do believe it takes work.
Yeah.
I do believe that it takes that, logical side that, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to meditate and I'm going to figure out what I want. I want to figure out what experiences, what contributions I want to make, and have kind of a plan, but definitely use that intuitive side, surrender, those intentions and those goals, and allow, the universe to kind of guide you to, that fastest, easiest way to kind of hack your way through. There's all these tools.
So now what does your kind of spiritual practice look like? Like what does kind of spiritual health look like to you at this point after having experienced these things?
I have definitely found a purpose. I definitely believe that life is about experiencing and creating the experiences that you want. I feel that life is about growth and curiosity, which is one of the things I love about what you're doing. It's opening up that curiosity, a space to talk about things. A lot of my old friends, I don't speak to them about a lot of this because it is very, it's my personal journey.
Right.
And a lot of them, I realized when I came to consciously say, I'm going to surround myself with like-minded people. I realized that the conversations, about who's dating who and who was invited to the last party, it didn't feel right to me. And that's where I was for a very long time. And now I feel like it's just all about growth and that curiosity. that's what gives you, life energy, that light,
Well, yeah, you seem like you've definitely tapped into it. You're just glowing like.
Thank you. So sweet. Yeah. I've never felt that was moving as fast as I am. In a year and a half to, from, I think I slept in my car a night. I slept on a friend's old couch one night. I mean, from not having anything to now being my own boss, making my own time, making so much more. I've got a trip to Southeast Asia next month that it just wasn't happening for so long. And in a year and a half, all of these changes happen. And I'm so very grateful for that. I'm so very grateful for that. There's so many things. I went from, doing the same old thing to doing everything. So for me, that path of continuous growth and becoming a better person, definitely my routine involves meditation. Part of that is when I say detox, I'm about 95% raw ingredient diet. I don't eat chemicals. I kind of got away from corporations altogether. When I moved here to PV, there's all these, mom and pop tienditas, these little stores, and I just love supporting them. So I don't eat any Doritos, for example. I was a big fan of Doritos. I still eat my chips, but they're homemade banana chips with just, some oil and salt, and that's it. No preservatives, none of that. And on the emotional side, on a daily basis, I ask someone for forgiveness and I forgive someone. So that's something that I do every single day.
Wow.
And I feel is really important. And I think there's been studies done on it. For athletes, jumping, they're measuring the jump, and then they go through this forgiveness process where you envision someone that you might, even if it's the guy at the coffee shop, that didn't say hello or something. And just, forgiving someone, anyone who you've kind of felt ill towards, or you have that feeling for, letting that go. And there's actual physical measurements that, you can jump higher.
That's amazing.
Feel lighter. So all of this stuff, all this research, there's so much out there now, with the technology, with the technology of performing those kind of studies and getting the information out to people through the internet, having access to that information.
Wow, that's really cool that now with all these kind of abstract concepts like forgiveness and compassion, they can now actually formally measure the results of these things. And it's just visualization. It's just mind actions, you're not calling people, or do you physically talk to people and say, I forgive you?
No,
this is all in your mind, right?
Yes. I know one of the first times I did this, my grandmother came up, and I'll have a conversation with her and I'll be like, what are you doing here? Why are you standing in front of me? And, I just said, the words, I forgive you. And I ask you to forgive me. And I just thought I had this resentment because she passed away.
Oh, wow.
And I would have never have had that if I didn't allow myself to go in a meditative state. Which, after all the research I've done, like you said, it's amazing. It's frequencies. When you go into a meditative state, you're going into what they call an alpha frequency, and certain words have higher vibrations. And they've done studies where, they put these electronic things in yogurt in front of you. You're not even touching, it or anything. And when somebody says a certain word to you, I think they used lawyer, and the person, immediately got tense, and you could see it on the barometer, that vibration reached this bowl of yogurt sitting in front of him.
Wow.
Without him touching it. So when you those things. And the studies they've done with plants, if you talk to them and say nice, pretty words, they survive and they flourish. And when you're mean to them, they die. They feel bad. So there's just so many studies out there that prove it. Certain words have higher frequencies. Yeah, as I grow and as I learn, you mentioned the attachment. I just keep releasing all of those attachments, and it just becomes less and less about me and more about other people. And I just know the more that I make myself a better person, the more I'll meet people like you and the community of people that we have now here. And it's been proven, there's been studies done where you put these people who are elevating high. Gandhi's one of them, Mother Teresa's one of them. There's actually a scale now. They're like in the 500 range, 600, 700 is like the max, Jesus Christ. Like these are people who had that high vibration, and they put a group of religious people and other I think it was 5 or 6, and it was in the U.S. It was in Washington, I believe. They put them in this community that was pretty stagnant, and their crime levels went down, the economy went up just by putting these people in that city.
Really? That's interesting. I'll have to look that one up.
Yes, I can send it to you.
Yes, please do.
So with all of this information, there's just no denying it. So when it comes to collective consciousness, I honestly believe that we're making the world a better place. I truly, honestly believe that. And although this was very frightening for me, I mean, yeah, I'm honored, to be a part of what you're doing here.
Well, I appreciate so much your willingness to share. I mean, I think it's true too, what you say, like we are all connected. So anything that we do, any amount of improvement we can do in our own tiny little spheres, which starts with our own selves, that's all we can really do. It's going to elevate the world at large. And so that is hopeful. And that is,
yes,
that is wonderful.
Yes. That is a belief that I have when it comes to spirituality. We are interconnected. We are all connected. And you may not see it, but if you pay real close attention, you can feel it. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. That was beautiful, beautiful things you've shared.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me and for providing this space.
Before we part, we'd like to say thanks for listening, and we hope you'll connect with us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. We would love to hear from you and appreciate all feedback, shares, and likes.
To learn more and subscribe to our newsletter, visit Intentionists.com. And no matter where you are or what you're creating, we send you love and invite you to breathe and begin.
See you next week.